start this series where I'm going to be sharing insights from my career in IT. I'm just going to break it into short videos, and then over time we'll begin to dig much deeper into more profound insights from those videos where I'll just put them together. I started out my career in wireless networking, believe it or not. So I've been in wireless networking. I've handled 802.11 ABG radios. I used to mount antennas for internet service when the ISP business became a thing back in the early 2000s. I did my IT in 2000, industrial training in 2003 with an ISP in Port Harcourt, and I later on went to work for them in Abuja and Lagos as well. Set up an ISP in Lagos, of course with help with teams. I'm not like that's a Superman, but I learned a lot working across different states, working with people who either were experts at mounting radios and antennas, experts at climbing masts. I've done 120 feet before without a safety belt, unfortunately. Experts at doing spectrum analysis when trying to capture a signal, from some Israeli satellite out there. So that was a broad range of experience. Excuse me, a broad range of experience in that field, right? Before I got the opportunity to work with a multinational in the area of IT service management. So I'll tell you a few stories that I think might be useful to you first from my experience as someone working as some kind of a freelancer, young person dealing with a company that was small. My company in Port Harcourt, we just had about maybe 20 people, right? Working. It was called Orbit Wireless Internet Services. In Abuja, it was also a startup, sort of, and we had to do a lot by ourselves. They had enough money to buy the equipment, Novell servers, radios, etc. And we had to try to, aside from our core business, make money by delivering other kinds of services, installing computers for the government and all that. Now, part of the lesson there is that if you find yourself as an IT person within a small company, you will find that your job role might not be very much clearly defined. Those are one of the key problems. Your job may not be very clearly defined. There is a lesson to learn from that. One of the lessons is that you must understand that that is where you are now, and you can leverage, instead of complaining about your undefined role, you can begin to dig deep within yourself and ask yourself, how can I contribute to the growth of this company and make a mark before I go to my next stop? You want to make a mark everywhere you are before you go to your next stop. That's the first problem. Your role is not defined. So when your role is not defined, define your role by yourself, and then begin to build capacity in that role. Sometimes the non-definition of roles also happens with even bigger companies where it's not clear what you're supposed to be doing. You have to take your career as like taking a bull by the horns and just grow it by yourself. Bootstrap that career. Now, the second thing that is likely to happen if you're working for a small company, a startup, or an organization that doesn't have very clearly defined structures, is very likely that there's no HR, so you get paid by the boss, more or less. So what happens is sometimes the pay doesn't come. I didn't get paid for 5 months during the my first stint in Abuja after I had graduated from school. I was promised something, but there was no paper backing it, and I couldn't argue about it. And of course, that is how many small companies are. There's little or no documentation. You're just asked to work, get paid. Sometimes you get paid, sometimes you don't get paid. Now that is a phase. You can enter into that phase with a lot of negative energy, be angry, I mean there was one situation where my boss, after I had moved from Abuja, after I had moved from Abuja to Lagos, on one occasion, my boss called me and asked me to give someone a certain amount of money. And I said no. I was upset and I said no. Basically my boss's boss. Now, the reason I said no was that I had not been paid for 5 months in Abuja and I just moved. And then maybe they paid the first salary and they told me, give this person this money. When I come, I'll give you. I was like, you just started paying me and you're already asking me to take money out of my personal money to give somebody else. Of course, he didn't take it very nicely. They didn't fire me because I was, as you can imagine, very valuable. But the point here is that I didn't need to do that. You build relationships. There are other kinds of value you can get from working in any environment aside from the money you are getting. Aside from the money you get from working there are other kinds of value. Those kinds of value could include relationships you build over time, could include the knowledge you gain. I gained a lot of knowledge by working there because you see, when you have an unstructured environment, you have a lot of access. I had access to switches, to routers, to radios. I was practically the one setting up the rack for internet service. I had to read and implement in a big organization with structures. Nobody lets you do that kind of experimentation with their equipment, very expensive equipment. But it allowed me to gain experience. It allowed me to gain a lot of experience. And I appreciate that right now, looking back. So those stories, I got to that talking about the fact that you may want to be more sane about the situation when you're not getting paid, because you may be getting more than pay in the place where you are currently working. The third story I would like to tell in that context is it's the issue of commitment to your role, to your job, creativity. On one occasion, I was basically left alone with, I mentioned that I was left alone to set up Lagos. I was left alone with the servers, the Novell network servers. And I remember my boss always used to tell me that Novell is the best because there are times where you leave a Novell server inside a server room for 17 years and it's fine. That's amazing. So those are big servers and those are powerful servers. So I basically read the documentation. I was able to set up a network of one computer to talking to the server and so forth. And my boss was very proud of it. There was another time my boss's boss came in, he looked at all the place, he saw how untidy the place was, and he was like, look at how this place is, and there are graduates here. Now, the truth, there are two things about working for someone, especially when the company is not yet structured, no procedures, no policies, nothing, is that you get to define how you work. So you must take the learnings you have from school, from your certification, from your experience, define how you work. Because your boss may not even know how you're supposed to work. You have to define it. You have to set up the rules when there are no rules. You have to be the professional you are hired to be. You have to bring in the value that your boss is not even expecting. Sometimes your boss accepts what they are not expecting. Sometimes they don't accept what they are not expecting. But that is your role as a professional, to look at your environment and ask yourself, how can I bring more value? So I'm going to stop here and then come back in another video with more insights from my journey in the IT industry. Thank you very much for listening, and see you soon.